Hello everyone, Godre here, and this is my money brief. Today's money brief is for the magas, for the maga guys. I mean, if you want to know what maga is, I mean, come on, you know what it is already. Make America great again. So for all the Trump supporters out there, today's money brief is for you basically. So congratulations on a resounding election victory. Trump basically did the unthinkable. Like, as far as I'm concerned, that's almost like a landslide win. And so those who are, on the left side of things, Democrats, well, sorry, better luck next time. Trump did a much better job this time around, and he's not only won, he's basically won in a resounding way. Like, he's taken the Senate with him, of course, the Republicans, and it's very likely that he's also going to take um, the House. So, hey, the markets love it. I mean, you've seen the stock market been on a bull ride since last week. Crypto market is on a tear. Cryptocurrency hit 82,000. Bitcoin actually hit $82,000 earlier in the week. And then we've seen most stocks essentially go up. And of course, stocks related to Elon Musk as well. Elon Musk's Tesla stock doing astronomically well because the market, expect a lot of good things from a Trump victory. I mean, it tends to happen most times whenever there's an election, end of an election, basically an election bounce, and investors tend to react. But from what I read as well, this is like the highest election bounce that they've seen in the US since the 30s. It's never been this good. So it's been great for them. And but hey, what does it mean for Nigeria? I think that's what matters at the end of the day. Yes, it's great for the Americans, but here in Nigeria, what does it mean for us? I mean, does the Trump victory basically favor us, or I mean, is it not in our favor? So today's money brief is essentially what I want to. That's essentially what I want to discuss. What does the Trump victory mean for the Nigerian economy? There is an amazing Nairametrics article on that. You can also check the site for it. But for those who don't want to read or who probably just want to hear me break this down, and this is for you. So we dive right into it because I'm trying to see if I can make this video as short as possible. So the first prognosis is that with the Trump presidency, the dollar is likely going to be stronger because that's what Trump wants. Trump wants a stronger dollar and not a weaker dollar. So, which you might say is a bit counterintuitive, but the markets expect to see a stronger dollar. And a stronger dollar means the dollar is going to be stronger against most of the currencies. And we know what that means for Nigeria. When you have a stronger dollar, then weaker currencies like the naira don't perform too well because with a stronger currency, most investments in the US will likely stay in the US rather than go out of the US, and that's what it looks like we're seeing, or we might see if a Trump presidency, pushes with its promise of a stronger dollar. Now, what is pretty also interesting here is that Trump wants to manufacture more in the U.S. rather than import. And so, if he's manufacturing and the manufacturing is going to lead to export, then I think he's going to also want a weaker dollar. But from all the indication, it appears that a stronger dollar is what he's essentially aiming for. So that might not work very well for Nigeria because with a stronger dollar, then it means that affects the exchange rate. Now, Trump also wants lower interest rates. So he wants interest rate to be super low in the US because he feels like that it's going to help with borrowing costs, especially help with homeowners pay lower mortgages, and of course credit card owners as well also pay lower interest rate in the credit card. And so the U.S. Fed is already pushing for lower interest rates. I've spoken to that already in some of my previous money briefs. And so just recently as well, they did cut again interest rate just recently. So they are cutting interest rate anyway, Trump or not. But maybe we might see a bit more aggressive interest rate cut. The U.S. Fed Chair Paul said recently that he's not going to be, swayed by a Trump presidency or bullied to resign by a Trump presidency. He's going to stay his course because, of course, the U.S. Fed is essentially independent of the U.S. government. So he's going to do what he wants to do. But it'll be interesting to see how that pans out because he's up against the most powerful US president in a really long time. And so lower interest rate, while it's good for the US economy, it's also good for the Nigerian economy as well because with lower interest rate, then you might want to see capital flows out of the US because when interest rate is low, US investors can borrow from the US economy and then go and look for higher returns in other countries that they think assets are cheap. And then, that creates liquidity, dollar liquidity for those countries. I mean, we all know dollar is still reserve currency. And so that's essentially what we're seeing. So with the interest rate lowered, if it does go as low as Trump wants, then that could be positive for Nigeria because you could see dollars flow into Nigeria now. The last time this happened, this was around 2000 and, Trump's first term, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 17, 18, 19, 20. He left in 2020. As at 17, 18, it wasn't that good. But as at 19, we started to see huge dollar flows. And by our records, in fact, in 2019, Nigeria saw the highest level of foreign portfolio inflows, about $20 billion. And $4 billion of that alone was coming from the US. So there was a lot of investment. If you all remember, that was when the exchange rate was 360, to the dollar. So 360 to the dollar. It was like that for, I think, about 2 years or so, pretty stable before things now started going south again, and COVID just made everything worse. So Trump era, low interest rates, pretty good for investment in the country. Now, Trump also wants to lower inflation rate for Americans. He says, look, he wants energy prices to cut by half. He was even specific about it. And so because he feels like if he's able to reduce energy prices, then that could also force down inflation rate, which has actually been trending down over the last few months. I mean, even though he won't admit it, it's been trending down for the last few months, but he's bent on even taking it further down. So if that happens, the only way that he's going to be able to push that through is if they are able to lower oil prices. And you can only lower oil prices by lowering crude oil prices, right? Sorry, gas prices in the US. You can lower gas prices, which is essentially fuel prices, by reducing crude oil prices, global crude oil prices. And so it's a bit of a double-edged sword for us because I don't know whether double-edged sword is the right word, but there are positives and there are negatives here. So one is that if he does succeed in lowering crude oil prices, then Nigeria's crude oil revenue dips. And we know that the government is running a huge fiscal deficit, which is also the reason why we have exchange rate pressures. So if we don't have enough crude oil revenue because of lower oil prices, then that could impact Nigeria negatively. However, we can mitigate this by increasing crude oil output. So if Nigeria increases crude oil output, then maybe the effect will be muted and we won't really see as much negative effect as we envisage. On the flip side too, lower crude oil prices could also mean lower fuel prices for Nigerians at the pump, right? Because our crude oil is also priced, our fuel is also benchmarked to crude oil prices. So maybe that could also be good for us in terms of cost in Nigeria. And let's remember that crude oil prices is no longer subsidized anyways. So, and of course, if it does succeed to drive inflation down in the US, then that could also possibly impact imported inflation into Nigeria. So that is one aspect of his policy that that I think has twin effect, positive and negative. All right, so that is the first part of this. I'm going to come back in the second part and then the second part of this money brief. I wanted it to be short, but it's Trump presidency. There's a lot happening. So on the next part, we're going to talk a bit more about other issues like immigration and geopolitical issues. I'll be right back. All right, so we're back. I mean, if you've missed part of this money brief, I've been talking about MAGA, the impact of MAGA on the Nigerian economy. MAGA, of course, is Make America Great Again, and very synonymous with Trump supporters. And Trump is going to be the next American president come January 20th next year. And so he has said a lot of things that he wants to do that we think would have impact on the Nigerian economy. And this is really what this Monday Brief is about. So there's the first part of this Monday Brief, which I basically talked about exchange rate and interest rate. And so on the second part, I want to talk about, I'm going to talk about immigration and geopolitics, but let's even move to trade. Now, Trump has made it clear that he is for, U.S. local manufacturing, which is essentially, basically, you know, the bottom line of MAGA, right? So Make America Great Again essentially is, look, let's make sure that everything that we manufacture here, that we buy or that we make, most of what we make is made in America, and that's what he wants, because he feels like that is going to boost the American economy. And so he's even gone as far as promising to impose huge tariffs against China, and if the Europeans don't play ball, he might also impose tariffs. And Trump is not really somebody that is fascinated with the WTO as a World Trade Organization, which of course Okonjo-Iweala, our own dear Okonjo-Iweala, heads. So there could be, shift from, global trade to people essentially just cornering trade to themselves. So we could be moving from maybe, the war in the Middle East and Ukraine and Russia to a trade war. I hope that doesn't happen, but a Trump presidency could usher that in, and that could have potential impact for Nigeria as well, because we are trying as much as possible to increase our exports to other parts of the world. We know it's mostly crude oil exports that we do, but we're trying to improve agro exports and mineral exports as well. And so U.S. is top 5 Nigerian trading partner. When you call China, India, Spain, you'd also call the U.S. as well as one of our major trading partners. So if he does push for stricter imports into the US, then that could have consequences for Nigeria. Now, bear in mind that if he really wants energy prices to go down, like he said, then that could also mean more crude oil production from the US, which means they don't even buy from us at all. That's a potential scenario that could happen. And then one other thing as well is that there's this act called AGOA, which was put in place by the Bush administration. Is set to expire 2025, and so Trump has said if AGOA expires, he's not going to renew it. So maybe he's going to have a change of mind, but when he was president initially, he wasn't intending to renew it because he doesn't think it's working as it was contrived. So now if he also scraps that, then that has an effect on export, because AGOA ensures that exports out of Africa is essentially tax-free or duty-free, as they call it. So that is a potential impact from a trade point of view if Trump basically, goes on and implements some of the things that he said that he wants to implement. Now, there's also, geopolitics. So geopolitics basically is, what does a Trump presidency mean for the world, whether it's for the war between the Palestinians and the Israelis, the Russia-Ukraine war, the seemingly dark clouds, around Taiwan, with China basically bearing on them, and the US saying don't go there. And then even some of the conflicts we have in the Sahel region, which concerns us here in Nigeria. And then some of the more despotic leaders we're seeing pop up in Southeast Asia, and even some parts of, the Americas, South America. Trump basically claims that if he comes in power, he's going to end all those wars, and he doesn't need those wars. I read somewhere that he told, Ukraine that, look, for all the territories that you've lost, forget it. Don't bother going after those territories. We're not about to tell you to get those territories back. Those territories are essentially gone. And so he's basically sending a message to the Ukrainians that he's not going to perhaps give them the kind of support that they got under Biden. He's probably going to give them a different kind of support, but one that would lead to the end of the war. So one way or the other, these things have geopolitical implications for Nigeria. First of all, if it goes on and they're able to stop that war between Russia and Ukraine, I think global food prices might drop because Russia and Ukraine are so important to food independence globally that the war alone did increase cost of food, not just for Nigerians, but for globally. And we do import a lot of our raw materials and food, especially from that region. Apart from the fact that it affects imports, it also affects logistics. So because a lot of, uh, transport companies, when I mean transport, mega transport companies that transport by ships or by cargo, basically have to bypass, Ukraine and Russia just to get things done, and that basically escalated shipping costs globally. So, if he does succeed in stopping that war, then that could help geopolitically. Now, there's also the little parts of not little. What am I even saying? There's also the huge side, the war in Israel and Palestine and even in Lebanon, that whole axis, and Iran. I mean, people believe that the Trump presidency could just end that stuff once and for all because Trump is probably not going to pander to some of the shenanigans that we're seeing in the Middle East from all sides. So he's likely going to be called black, black, and white, white. And so maybe that war might end. And if that war ends as well, then the fear that crude oil prices might escalate might not happen. And like I mentioned earlier, he doesn't want crude oil prices to go up. So if that does happen, then crude oil prices will stay low, and that could also favor Nigeria one way or the other, right? Because, I mean, it favors us because fuel prices will drop, diesel prices will drop, but government revenue might also drop, except government is able to ramp up production. We're probably doing 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 million barrels per day when we should be doing 2.2, 2.3 million barrels per day. If we're doing over 2 million barrels per day, nobody will be worried really. We think we'll be able to survive. But let's remember that in the initial Trump era, we saw crude oil as low as almost zero. Of course, maybe that was COVID, but on an average, I think it kind of averaged $50 or thereabout, or $50 plus in his era. So I won't be surprised if we see crude oil prices along those lines. Now, the last thing is immigration. Trump has said that he wants to deport, mass deportation. In fact, that was one of the major cornerstones of his election pitch, and dude is serious about it. So he wants to do mass deportation. And let's remember that the last time he was president, Nigeria was on their ban list. And so one of those countries that they essentially banned. So I do expect that traveling to the US is going to be a lot more difficult than it ever has been. So if you don't have anything tangible you're going to do there, or you don't provide any kind of value, or you're trying to go in there as an undocumented worker, and then maybe you're going to go in there on a visiting visa and you're hoping to stay, it's going to be a lot more difficult than ever because the Trump presidency doesn't want it, and Americans essentially don't want that as well. So that could also have potential consequence for Nigeria because it then means that the mass of Nigerians that are traveling abroad will reduce, and that also reduces potential future remittances. But of course, you still have a lot of Nigerians living abroad who can still remit money. But then there's also a flip side to it because a lot more Nigerians stay back, and then maybe we can stay back and build this country, right? You could have a lot of Nigerians move to other parts of the world, like Canada. We've seen some people go to Canada, legitimize their stay in Canada, and then from there move into the US, or maybe do that in Europe as well. So you've seen a bit of that happen, and maybe that could be what might happen. But the point is that it's going to be a lot more difficult for people to get into the US without the right papers under a Trump presidency because he has said it loud and clear, mass deportation. So that's basically what he wants to do. So that for me is essentially the talking points of for me for this Donald Trump presidency and what it means for Nigeria. I don't know if I've missed anything, but if you think I've missed anything, please drop a comment and then maybe I'll just touch on that. But that has been my morning brief for today. I hope that I was able to break this down as much as you want. Do have a profitable week ahead. Peace.